Hold on. I can't believe this. So, if you're sick and you can't come to work or you can't come to work for any reason, you have to find a replacement, but no holiday pay. What is that? Hi, my lovely people. Welcome back to the island. Guys, I am from Trinidad and Tobago. All right. And I am also like a director in our family business. Okay. So we have employees and this video caught my attention. This is basic workers' rights, British versus American. And I was curious to find out how the rights are different between British and American versus in Trinidad, based on my experience as an employer and also my experience when I was on the workforce as an employee, how it differs. So this should be exciting. We're gonna compare today. So it's really British versus American versus Trinidadian. Like the video, let's go.
Growing up in the States, I had to show up to work regardless of how sick I was. I mean, unless I was absolutely dying, and even then I had to call around to find replacements, which is why I'm not really surprised about this recent CNN report saying many Americans show up to work very sick regardless of how far along Omicron is now spreading. Doesn't surprise me in the slightest. If you're from any other country and you're like, why the heck are Americans like that? Strap yourselves right on in. Today's video, we're going to be talking a little bit about the differences between US and UK culture in regards to leaving work and work benefits. And if you're new to my channel, hello, my name is Evan Ediger, and this is kind of what I do. I'm British American.
Evan.
I like making videos about these interesting differences.
Y'all make sure to check out Evan's channel. He looks like he makes really good content. So shout out to Evan for this video. Let's go.
And well, recently, last week, I made a video about how I got my first job in the UK, and a lot of you wanted to know more about those interesting differences between working for a US company in the US versus a UK company in the UK. And also a little bit of intermingling. So that's where this video came from. Now, I wasn't joking in the intro. No matter how sick I was, when I was working at a Pizza Hut, a food service restaurant, I was expected to show up to work or find a replacement, which is something that most people in the UK, when I told them this, said, well, isn't that what the hiring manager is supposed to do? Yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense. He should be the one kind of balancing. Why is it down to the individual employee? Well,
Hold on. I can't believe this. So if you're sick and you can't come to work or you can't come to work for any reason, you have to find a replacement? That's crazy. Trinidad, the boss needs to find a replacement. Wow.
it's because when you're sick in the US, that is actually your fault. You're guilty of this, and you need to pay the company back by doing another job and finding someone else to replace. That's just the culture. Whereas because I was brought up like this, my first couple jobs in the UK, I showed up incredibly ill during days in which I was sick and was told to go home, which blew my mind. What do you mean? What? I already showed up, I'm coughing all over the place, but I got work to do, right? No, I was sent home and I could get healthy. What? But one of the most interesting aspects of this whole thing was that I was paid for when I was sick, which was the first time I'd ever experienced that. And most Americans will tend to agree. What happens is when you are ill and you have to ask the boss for the day off because you're sick, a lot of times that comes out of holiday pay. Holiday. You see, most UK companies have something in place for this. In the inevitable likelihood that an employee is sick. If you do get sick for longer than 3 days, the government actually can step in and ensure you get a little bit under £100 per week, plus whatever your employer agrees to give you until you get better, which is a nice little thing to fall upon. Now, in the sad circumstance, you are sick for a very long time.
So like in Trinidad, if you're sick, like you break your foot or something like that, you come with your doctor's note. Some jobs in Trinidad, they give you sick leave. So they will pay you for like a week or so, based on your doctor report. And then we have this thing called NIS, that you pay every month for times like this when you get sick. Or even insurance, you know, in work insurance, helps a bit with this. So, but they only pay for a certain amount of time. So you can't be sick for too long. You need to recover, man.
You can go get a doctor's note, but as we have nationalized healthcare, that doesn't cost anything. On the other hand, in the US, the land of the free, there is no federally mandated sick pay. So regardless of if you're sick for 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, you are unpaid for the most part. which isn't really the best situation. And especially if you're someone that is living paycheck to paycheck, which as of March 2022 is 64% of Americans, nearly 2 out of every 3 Americans is living paycheck to paycheck. I don't really think you can blame someone for going to work when they're ill if financially they're just playing the cards that they've been dealt as best as they can. Also, given the fact that a lot of American employers demand a doctor's note if you are ill for more than 1 or 2 days, which is then an entire extra day you need to take off to go to your doctor. And if you don't have great insurance, for instance, when I was working at different retail restaurants and things, well, that's $75 a session. So now I've lost essentially a day or two's wages, plus I'm freaking ill still, and I have to heal. It's just not a good situation. And the thing about this issue is, it's really not political in the slightest. In fact, 94% of self-identified liberals and 81% of self-identified conservatives agree that paid sick days should be a basic human worker right. But then, if such a huge grouping of these two sides that usually war all the time finally agree on it, why do we not have any change? Well, there's an even bigger percentage of corporations and employers that really don't give a shit about what you think, and well, they have a lot of money and they'd like to keep it that way. And so they've successfully lobbied to ensure that no change has happened. Does that sound familiar to any other part of the US law? Almost all of it, actually. Yes, it's sad. And sadly, as is the case in most of these things, the people with the largest amount of money have the largest voice in US politics, and so can shout down the massive majority of people.
And I can see where he's coming from, especially as a business, somebody who is part of the business organization. I guess, you know, people staying home because they are sick. Yes, you're sick and you need to recover, but also the business also suffers a loss. And to pay you while you're home, it is the right thing to do, I think. You know, because it's not your fault, but the business does lose at the same time. So I understand both sides, but
who just want this basic right so that they can have more money, which is, of course, the American dream. Now, given that this is the sad state of affairs, most Americans have found a loophole on how to have paid sick leave. And sadly, you probably know where it's going. Well, it comes out of their holiday pay. One of the reasons why Americans don't travel or go on holiday as much as anyone else in Western civilization, well, they use them for sick days. Now, regardless of whether or not you get paid time off during your next trip abroad or to the local shops, today's video sponsor, Revolut, can actually help you with that.
Like, I'm finding these things to be really crazy. Like, to see how they do things in the British and America, the different rules that they have and provisions that they put in place for workers, it's totally different. Wow.
Ah, yes, holiday pay. Now, most people realize that Americans don't travel as much as many of their European counterparts. And a lot of Americans will say, well, it's because the country is so big and there's not many places to visit outside of like Mexico and Canada. But usually as soon as somebody makes this argument, Australia enters the chat. But it has more to do with the fact that there are no federal protections for holiday pay in the States at all. I don't know how many times I've told this story on this channel, but I'll tell it again. I worked 5 years at a Pizza Hut working 30 hours a week, and I earned 0 days paid holiday, whereas I worked under 20 hours in London and managed to get 2 days a month. I was blown away with how I was able to earn anything, considering that I'd worked 5 years and hadn't even gotten a single raise from my $2.13 an hour they were paying me. Somehow, legally, they didn't have to. How was that legal, though? Well, federally, there aren't any laws about holiday pay. The government thought it'd be better to just leave that up to the employers. And as we all know, employers always have the best intentions. They don't. Now, my state decided to have it so that once you work over a certain amount of time, in my case 30 hours, you are entitled to some paid holiday. However, they made it a step function, meaning you have to cross over that threshold of 30. There isn't a gradual increase like, say, the way we pay taxes. And so that's just going to allow capitalistic companies to be capitalistic companies, to ensure I never was allowed to work over 33 hours a week, just so they could make sure I averaged out under that and they would never ever have to pay me a single day of paid holiday. That's just what companies are going to do if you let them do that. That's the point of government, to step in and give people the basic rights that they're entitled. I had a friend that worked at Google in the UK and got 30 days of paid holiday, moved to the US, and lost half of them. Because, 15 days? That's quite a lot in the US. Well, in the UK, we are mandated to have at least 28 days of paid holiday. That's 5.6 weeks of paid holiday, including bank holidays. If an employer wants to, they can give you more than that or less, but that's just how it is. Though, to be fair, the US Department of Labor has said that 76% of private sector employees got paid holiday, and the average of that was...
Like, I think that it all depends in Trinidad. Sometimes, like, in some places that I work, like stores and stuff like that, they ain't giving you no holiday pay. Whatever they pay you, you go home with that, especially for Christmas. If they're nice, they go give you a bonus, but no holiday pay. What is that?
10. Well, as there's no federal law, employers don't have to, and so they won't unless they're forced to, which is why it's good that in certain states, they actually have. In states like Vermont, for every 52 hours you work, you get 1 hour of paid holiday. And for those of you that enjoy math, that means that working 40 hours a week in the state of Vermont, every single week, at the end of the year, you earn 5 days of paid holiday. 40 hours. That's horrible. And of those 5 days, if we know that the average American is sick 3.9 days of the year and they don't get paid sick days, well, of those 5 days in Vermont, you've got 1 left if you've got an average amount of sickness. Congratulations, where are you gonna go? Dorney Park? It's a bit far. And all of these things together really show how the culture is in terms of when you ask your boss for a day off in the US and they act as if, even though you're fully entitled to it, you're hurting them and you are doing them a disservice to take the holiday that you're legally allowed to have in certain states. It's just such a weird contrast to countries like Germany, in which their employers force them to go on holiday because they understand that a well-rested employee is going to be a better one, make better decisions, and be happier in general. I mean, the UK isn't the greatest thing, but I'm thankful that we do have those 28 days of paid holiday so that people can take off, people can enjoy their lives and not just work every single day of their lives. Now, as a quick asterisk here,
you see, when you're really important to a company, like the job that you do is so important that nobody else can fill that void. When you want to take a holiday, a day off to relax and just, ooh, you're doing us dirty. Where we gonna find somebody to replace you now? Like, nobody can do your job better than you. So that's from the business perspective. You know what I'm saying? So, this is crazy.
There are some companies in the US and the UK that both employ this new magical thing called unlimited time off. Unlimited paid holiday. That sounds like a dream. I was offered a job like this once, and that was the first thing I had a question about. I went, how does that work? Unlimited time off? I can just take off? And he was like, yeah, you have unlimited, as opposed to like 28 days or 29. You have unlimited. So I said, so I'm just gonna get hired and then just start going on holiday. And he went, well, you do have to make sure that you work enough, like you feel like you've gotten enough done. And I was like, well, that's not unlimited then, now is it? Now, truth be told, I did go on holiday way more than any other employee, but I was a rare case. In fact, the whole concept of unlimited paid holiday, it is found, means that people take off less because they don't realize how much they have. If you have 28 days and you've spent 14, by the end of the year, sometimes you want to just make sure you spend those final days. If it's unlimited, you don't actually have an end limit, and so most people will spend less.
I've never heard about
there it
this.
is. Companies giving you something that looks like it's beautiful. It is a Trojan horse. It's actually so you take off less. Classic capitalism. Now, obviously, sometimes people die. Wow, we're getting real dark. Bereavement leave is something that you would really expect at the end of the day for both countries to have.
Bereavement
the UK does have a law, however, if you do lose a dependent, which I'm thankful does include things like housemate, which the US's does not, but if you do lose a dependent in the UK, the law states you're to be given a reasonable amount of time off to grieve. Reasonable. That's the law. You must be reasonable. And it's odd that this type of thing just works in the UK.
Honestly, this is the first time that I've heard this, like it being an actual law or an actual right or something that, you can call upon in that situation. In Trinidad, it's like, okay, you tell your employer, this one passed away, that one passed away. They maybe give you 1 day home and time to go to the funeral, and that's it. Like, I've never, once you have a good boss, they kind of be like, okay, I could see that you can't even work effectively because this is bothering you. Go home, take 2 days off, come back next week. But there isn't like a set something that I know of personally. If you're from Trinidad and you're watching this, you want to correct me, go ahead. But I've never heard of a bereavement leave to grieve. I've never heard of that.
In the law, it says, be reasonable. In the US, that's not, I don't think that would ever work. As much as I don't really feel protected by a clause saying it has to be reasonable, in the UK, they do kind of follow through with that most of the time. In the US, though, the only thing we really have is the Family and Medical Leave Act, which allows for 12 weeks of leave-protected unpaid leave. Which is good, you can come back to your job at the end of it, and ta-da, you've still got it. However, there's so many asterisks revolving around this FMLA, or My Life America Act, there's a big chance it doesn't even apply to you to get this unpaid leave, and you're going to have to work regardless of what you're going through. Do you work for a company with fewer than 50 people? Well, congratulations, you do not qualify. You have to keep working through your grief. Did one of your loved ones wait to pass away until after you got your new job? You're also not entitled to any leave-protected unpaid leave. Nope, you've got to come to work grieving because you have to stay at the same company for at least a year before that can happen, which is a reason why I'm assuming most people are afraid to leave jobs, because that transitionary period, there's so many benefits the government is no longer giving you. So if you work for a company with fewer than 50 people, or you've recently switched jobs, the FMLA just does not apply to you. And in fact, on the official website for the FMLA, it states, if you know ahead of time that you'll be taking leave for a new child or a planned medical treatment for yourself or a family member, you are required to give your employer 30 days advance notice. In the case of planned medical treatment, you must try to schedule the medical treatment when it will not unduly disrupt your employer's business. So, next time you plan on being sick or plan on having someone die or birthed or anything else, make sure it does not inconvenience your employer. That is in the US law. And so the difference here being that in the UK, employers are asked to give a reasonable time off to their employees when they're going through grief, and in the US, employees are asked to give their employer reasonable time off when the employee is going through grief. It's just a country for the haves, not the have-nots. The employees have so little protection, you have to ask for permission for one of your relatives to die. What the f***? And the last of the big leaves we're gonna be talking about today, the big one, the elephant in the room.
Oh, that's crazy. That's so crazy. They're so strict over there. Do anybody actually follow this? Do you actually follow these rules?
No offense to your mother, but maternity leave and paternity leave. What was that segue? We've all seen the map before. The fact that the US has 0 days of paid maternity leave is still disgusting. How it's not protected at all is disgusting. In the UK, employees can take up to 52 weeks of maternity leave and their jobs are protected for when they come back. And of those 52 weeks, the first 6 are paid at 90% of their salary. The next 33 are paid at 90% or £156.66, whichever is smaller, and then the next weeks are actually unpaid. But of that period, you still have your job protected, you still have some money coming in, and you can take care of your child during the moments in which it needs you most. Now, when it comes to paternity leave, the UK definitely falls flat here, only providing fathers with 1 to 2 weeks of paid paternity leave.
I've never heard paternity
leave. £156.66 or 90% of your salary, whichever is smaller. But it is 2 weeks that you're allowed to take off, and you also get 2 prenatal appointments before the birth of your child, so if you need to take off to check on how the baby's doing in the mama's belly, you can do that. Now, when it comes to the US, do you remember that Family and Medical Leave Act we were talking about earlier? That's the only thing the US has in place for expectant mothers. Unpaid leave. This means as soon as employees are finished going into labor, they need to go back into the labor force because there's no other way of affording to take care of that child. There's nothing there to protect them. And with just how expensive US hospital bills can be when it comes to having a child there, it's no surprise how many reports are coming out of mothers going back to work within a couple days after just having a child.
So in Trinidad, what we have is maternity leave. I don't know about paternity leave. That's new for me. We do have maternity leave, and I believe like women, they can stay home from like 8 months pregnant, 7 months pregnant, depending on how your pregnancy is going. The doctor might recommend that you go on maternity leave based on the health of your pregnancy or whatnot. And after you make the baby, some people get like 1 month home after making the baby, so they are more lenient when it comes to maternity leave. And some jobs do offer maternity leave pay, and some jobs do have NIS to protect that. Yeah, so mothers, we good in Trinidad when it comes to making baby and staying home. I wish that we could stay home with our kids longer after birth, but I've seen the minimum to be 1 month, I've heard.
In America. So wrapping this up, sick pay, holiday pay,
Or 2
bereavement
weeks,
pay,
or 2
and
weeks.
maternity leave are basic workers' rights that people in the UK and around the world get to enjoy, whereas people in the US just don't. The only way an American worker can hope to get any of these basic workers' rights is if by chance their employer just happens to, out of the goodness of their heart, provide it, which doesn't happen very likely, which is why it's
have
good
a
to see
good
that there's a
employer.
large resurgence in the States of workers' unions coming back into fashion. Starbucks, Amazon, Apple, everyone is fed up with the fact that they're not given the rights, the government isn't protecting them, and so people are demanding they protect themselves, forming unions and demanding the rights they deserve. How long did we have to put up with people clapping their hands for essential workers? And now that COVID is, for the most part, cut and dried, we're seeing people go, oh, well, you're not that essential, no pay raise for you. What do you want to get paid more than $15 to flip a burger? Well, considering the cost of living has gone up, yes. I think they do. It is really hard that at the end of the day in the US, we have to fight for those basic freedoms at the bottom, but that's the case when people with a lot of money don't want things to change, and I don't think they do. Genuine question, do you think within our lifetime you will see the US government step in and provide these basic rights that every other country's citizens have had for many years? I'd like to be hopeful and say yes, but the way that most American politics is run by money, it's looking very doubtful. But regardless of your stance on these different types of leave me a comment. Tell me what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. Or if you'd like, you can watch another research video over here on my channel. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you have a nice day. I am sweaty. I'll see you next Sunday. Goodbye.
Woo, I know that exhale, like when you finish up that big video, you just go, oh. That was a really cool video. Really good video there, Evan. Basic workers' rights, British versus American, and I add in versus Trinidad. You're welcome. So I think that was brutal. That was brutal. The rights, I like paternity for daddies. I've never heard about the bereavement law. Yeah, so there were some things I didn't know about. I don't think we have in Trinidad. It's just, I think that in Trinidad people are more lenient when it comes to work. So we do have rights, but we do have this thing called we taking advantage of the boss's kindness. So, you know, if you can go home now, we'll find somebody else. If it's that kind of job where we can just slip somebody in, we will. What as far as a business standpoint stands, like your workers are very important if the job that they're doing cannot be done by anybody. So when you want to stay home, it's like you're cursing at us because it's like, where are we going to find somebody, you know, who's going to do your job as good as you? If you're not here, the level of productivity goes down, the level of production goes down. Like, we can't have that. You must be here. So some bosses are really strict, really lenient. They want you to be here because that's the way the ship works. That keeps the ship running. And sometimes they do overdo it. Like, especially that law about bereavement, you have to give 30 days notice if somebody's going to die. Like, what? So now that can't be right. That can't be right. That can't be right. And I wish mothers get more time. I wish they get more time. But in Trinidad, people do what they want. They do what they want. Guys, make sure you're liking the video if you want more British versus American content on the island. Yeah.